All right, good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for attending. This is the Haverford Township Planning Commission. Today is Thursday, June 11th, 2026. May we please start with the Pledge of Allegiance. We have roll call, please. Okay. Ms. Dobbs, present. Mr. Welsh?
Here.
Ms. DiTrulio? Here. Mr. Cortese?
Here.
Mr. Terranova?
Here.
Ms. Anopa? Here. And not present tonight is Mr. Capuzzi, but we do have present tonight with us Mark Plakta, who is representing our Township Solicitor's Office. Okay, thank you. Just for everyone in the audience, I believe a lot of folks are here to talk about zoning. We do have an order of business first before that, which is a land development application at 2601 Haverford Road. They're here to discuss a preliminary final land development. Do we have somebody from the applicant?
We do.
You could introduce yourself, please.
I will, thank you. Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Kirk Karagalian. I'm an attorney in media. I'm here representing Coatesville Land, Inc. We're here before you this evening on, as was pointed out, a preliminary final land development application. This is a property that's located 2601 Haverford Road. It's in the, I believe it's the 6th Ward. Again, the name of the company is Coatesville Land, Inc. You might be wondering, where did you get the Coatesville Land, Inc. name? This was purchased as part of a tax-free exchange, a 1031 exchange, back in February of 23. My cousin, Peter Karakelian, is the owner of that company, and he's here if anybody has any questions. And we also have with us Alex Tweedy from Landcore Engineering. A little bit about the relief we're requesting, of course, is tonight we're asking you to make a favorable recommendation for approval of the land development plans. This property's roughly 1.3 acres gross, 1.2 acres net. It's triple zoned, it's split zoned, it's zoned C1, it's zoned R4, and it's zoned institutional. Some of you may be familiar with the property, and before I get too far into this, we have the exhibits. I know some of them are here electronically, but we have packets, if I can hand them up to the board so that you can track along. So we'll go through these quickly. First thing I want to show you, the existing conditions. I want you to see what we currently have. This has been the situation since the client bought it. It's been operating as a car wash since, I believe, the mid 70s. And sorry, there's the overview. That's what the property looks like. That's a site plan with a graphic overview, photo overview. You can see where the intersection is, Lorraine Street. Peter happens to live right next door to the car wash. So unlike other developers, he wants to make sure this is right. He wants to make sure it's properly landscaped. And he lives in this house right here. So he's going to be a neighbor, and in addition to operating the business there. So first thing I'd like to show you are the pictures of the current property. And I'll just take you through them real quick. Oh, sorry. That's the back. There's more pictures. This building is coming down. All this equipment's being removed. The trailer's being removed. If anyone wants to buy one of the cars, if they're still there, they can. Most of these cars, I think some of them have been removed already, but you've got dumpsters, you've got storage trailers, you've got debris, you've got this stuff, I'll call it, from the current tenants. This is what we currently have in the back. More pictures, aerial pictures, and you'll see the irregularly shaped triangle, and Alex will talk a little bit more about what we're going to be doing there. And there's another shot of the triangle. This is all going to be green. There's going to be trees, skip laurels, and grass. I mean, this is going to be a really nicely done up part of the tract. In fact, this client's going to be dedicating about a third of the property to open space. So contrary to what you see here, this is going to be beautiful, clear, nice vegetated open space. The the improvements that are being made primarily consist of installing a permanent canopy. And again, I'm going to let Alex run through that. A permanent canopy. Right now, there is a canopy that just sort of hangs there. I don't know if I had a picture of that. It's not a very secure canopy. The other way? This way? There you go. This is what we have there now. It's a temporary canopy. There's going to be it's going to be a permanent structure. It's primarily designed for the safety of the employees, shielding people from the sun glare. It's an overall safety improvement. The directional flow of the traffic on the lot is going to change now, so it's a much safer approach to the car wash and exiting from the car wash. There'll be less traffic backing up. It's a really good solution. I'll let Alex do that. So let's talk a little bit about what we've done so far. We've gotten zoning relief from your zoning hearing board. We are allowed to construct and develop in the floodplain. We are allowed to expand the non-conforming use, because that is currently a non-conforming use in the district. And we're permitted to have structures within the front yard setback area. And they're primarily the vacuum cleaner stanchions that are going to be put there. So we did get zoning relief. We realize there's some waivers that we are requesting. When we get to that part of this evening, perhaps we could do that at the end of the presentation. There's actually one more waiver that was not in the amended waiver letter, and we apologize for that. And that one waiver was, we wanted to go preliminary final. We should have asked for that. That should have been the very first thing that was asked for, but it was inadvertently omitted. So in addition to the ones that are stated in the amended waiver letter, we want to cover that with you as well. We received a review letter from the township's engineer, very good comments, and Chuck spoke to Alex. They've had some communications to get some clarity around some of the points. So if we don't call out any of the comments in the review letter, it's safe to assume we're going to comply, and if you want an affirmative statement to that effect, there it is. We did have some clarifications about some of the landscaping and whatnot. So on that note, I think it's probably best if we walk through the review letter, tell you what we still had some questions about, some clarifications that we need, some guidance from you, and then we'll talk about the waivers. Thank you.
Yeah, as noted, Alex Tweedy with Landcorp, I'm the civil engineer from the project. Just to clarify some more on kind of the circulation improvements, we can run through the site plan to start with. Kirk gave a pretty good explanation, but really the business in the building is staying almost the same size as it is today. There's a small addition to fill in one corner, but there's really no new buildings being constructed. As noted, we are replacing the canopy, the temporary canopy, with a permanent canopy. But the most important improvement from a traffic perspective is currently you pull off Lorraine Street and you go right into the tunnel. There's only about room for one car to queue. The main purpose of this project is to flip the operation of the tunnel and allow some on-site stacking and a formal pay station setup to happen. So with the demolition of the landscape yard, as noted, this 0.4 acre triangle on the back of the site all goes to green, as opposed to all those debris piles, dumpsters, cars, etc. And the building gets removed. But that also opens up the opportunity for us to create this drive lane adjacent to the car wash building. And that allows cars to enter off Lorraine, have room to actually queue on site, go through an automated pay station system, which helps the efficiency of the operations. And then we would flip the direction of the tunnel. So you would go through the pay station, come through, and then enter, and then you would exit immediately out back onto Lorraine. Or, as Kirk noted, we got zoning approval to allow vacuum stanchions in the front yard. There's existing parking lot here. There are some vacuums on site, but we would add additional vacuums. So you would get your car washed, you would be able to leave immediately or circulate through into the parking lot and do a self-vac if you wanted to as well. So from an overall traffic flow and operation standpoint, this is a drastic improvement to the queuing and storage availability for the cars. There are some renderings just to get a sense of some of the improvements that Peter is proposing. As you can see, these would be the vacuum stanchions in the front yard. This is the entrance canopy noted. So as I noted, you would now come in, drive behind the building, enter through this direction, drive back out towards Lorraine, and either exit or travel to the vacuum stalls. And just some more pictures of what the site's going to look like. So as noted, we have the review letter. Everything is a will comply except for a handful of items that are either somewhat narrative in nature, relate to a waiver, or relate to Shade Tree Commission approval. We are scheduled to attend later this month on June 22nd for the Shade Tree meeting, which will discuss a lot of these landscape features as well. But there are some comments relating to buffering between the residential property and the car wash, and then some waivers as far as street trees. If you're familiar with Lorraine Avenue, it's paved right up to the back of the sidewalk. There's an existing gas main that runs right basically on the property line there. So there are, one of our waivers is to not install those street trees, and what we're proposing to do is we would still provide the correct number of street trees. We're just going to move everything to the back of the property into that green open space that we're creating, because we can't install them along the street with the existing paving limits and the utilities that are there. So in the letter, zoning comments 2, 3, and 5 all generally relate to landscaping items. Number 2 just talks about the buffer between parked cars, which would be the pay station lanes, and the residential property. We do have a line of skip laurels screening that. There is also a fence on that property that's going to be repaired and installed and cleaned up with a new fence. The skip laurels do stop short of the bend in that property line. There's a small cluster of 2 ash trees here. We did not want to install the skip laurels underneath the ash tree and disturb the root zone. Frankly, they're in poor health with the disease anyway. Pete's working with an arborist. He's already done some treatments on them, trying to bring them back to life. We kept the skip laurel short because we didn't want to stress the tree more working in and around the root zone. If the Planning Commission or the Shade Tree Commission wants those skip laurels extended for the full limit of that property line, we can install them. We just worry what they might do to the existing trees. So we can discuss that with the shade tree if that's more appropriate, but that's comment 2 and 4. And 4 also speaks to the front yard landscape, which we talked about along Lorraine. We're paved right up to the roadway limit. So we're looking at providing the correct number of trees, but relocating their location away from the frontage. So we'll discuss those options with the shade tree and take their direction. And number 5 just talks about compliance with the zoning decision. We'll obviously provide any necessary documentation that the canopies are permanent structures. The zoning office didn't want any more, or the zoning decision didn't want any more temporary canopies on site, which we agreed to. And then back in the rear of the site is where we're adjacent to the SEPTA busway. With the demolition of all the properties back there, there is an existing fence that is in some disrepair. We are planning to remove that fence and replace it with a post and rail fence. And as we noted, just green up that area and improve the quality and the aesthetic. One item which we'll also discuss with Shade Tree, the rendering that's on the screen now is what was proposed with the original landscape plan. In discussions with how we want this kind of green space to function, what we're actually going to propose to Shade Tree and to this commission as well is to flip the shade trees and the arborvitae. So what we want to build is SEPTA busway, a new post and rail fence. Then we want to have the arborvitae directly up against that post and rail fence, and then put the shade trees on the inside. We feel that that'll give a better environment for the residential neighbors to have some green space and some canopy of shade trees before the screening trees along the busway, which this is an alternate rendering of that. These plans are the same except basically the trees flip location. So this is what we would like to propose as an alternate landscape plan. Same number of trees, same general scheme, just flipping where the screening line of the arborvitae's goes. Getting into the subdivision plan, there are a few waivers. Well, Kirk noted that we did not include the prelim final waiver on. We need to add that, but then with Chuck's letter, there were 3 additional waivers that were flagged that we wanted to discuss tonight. Number 8 of the letter talks about a 400 feet limit on the survey of showing all storm drain, sanitary, and public sewer. We would like a waiver for that. We feel that provision is more appropriate for a new development that's proposing new utility connections, providing service from existing mains. We aren't proposing any utility work here. All the existing water, sewer, and storm connections are staying the same. So we don't feel that that's a necessary drafting provision for this plan set. Number 9, we did get zoning relief for work in the floodplain, but there is also a provision in the subdivision ordinance that no cuts and fills are permitted in the floodplain area. With this plan, we received the zoning relief for work in the floodplain. We are proposing what's called a letter of map revision with FEMA, which is basically us just submitting our new calculations for the floodplain and updating the calculations on file with FEMA. With the removal of the landscape building, there's a drastic improvement to the floodplain. We removed that large impediment within the floodplain, but we are putting the canopy supports and the pay station supports and the canopies for that back in. So there are cuts and fills within the floodplain. What we are proposing, and we will submit our calculations to Chuck's office. The township has to do a review, sign off on it as the community official before it goes to FEMA. But what we're proposing is basically a no net change. Though there's cuts and fills, we're balancing those cuts and fills, and we'll provide calculations that it is a no net difference to the floodplain as part of our proposed development. So we're seeking a waiver from that saldo section to allow us to do that work, subject to the approval of the FEMA letter of map revision, which will also be reviewed by your engineer. And then similarly, which I'll defer to Kirk and Peter for more discussion, but on 12, there's a discussion, since this is over 1 acre of land, it triggers the township open space and park and rec requirements. Once again, this use is a redevelopment of an existing use. We're not adding a new use to the township. We're really just flipping the direction of travel and building some support structures. We don't believe that it creates a new demand for park and recreation facilities in the township, and we would seek a waiver of the park and rec dedication. On page 4, there are some comments on stormwater. I spoke with Chuck this morning. We'll provide some clarification on our calculations. The 2 items that Chuck wanted to discuss tonight or have us make plan revisions for was number 19, car washes are deemed what's viewed as a hotspot, looking for some additional water quality improvements for the runoff from that. What we talked about as an opportunity is there's an existing drainage system in the back of the car wash today that drains into Cops Creek that runs through the site. We are maintaining that storm connection, but what we agreed is a good option is to direct the runoff into this green space here. We are creating a little island in the center of the entrance between the pay stations and entering the tunnel. What we can do is install a new inlet in that grass area, direct all the runoff into a bowl, let it filter a little bit through the grass, get some water quality treatment before it goes into the storm drainage system and then gets piped into the creek. And then the other provision is comment 21. The stormwater ordinance has a 100-foot riparian buffer provision in it. We can add that limit to the plan. It's generally similar to the limit of the floodplain, but similarly to the floodplain approval we received from the zoning hearing board and our waiver for the cuts and fills in the floodplain. We can show the riparian buffer, but there will be work proposed within that riparian buffer. The most important work within that riparian buffer is the removal of that landscape building today. It's within 10 feet of the stream in this location. The 100-foot limit does come a little bit into this green space area, so there will be some greening in the upper limits of that riparian buffer, up along the limit of the pay lane, but we are replacing a building structure and then replacing it with just a simple driveway. So we think that's a net benefit to the riparian area, but there is work within that buffer. And then as noted in the general section of the letter, there is demolition of that landscape building. The back wall is basically right along the SEPTA property line. So Chuck's just noting that, we're adjacent to SEPTA. We are planning to do all the demolition from our side of the property. We will, sit inside our property and demolish the building into our site, but we will provide notice to SEPTA at demolition time that we're taking that building down and that we're on the property line with SEPTA. 24 is requesting an easement for light pole improvements at Haverford and Lorraine. We're not necessarily opposed to that provision. We just need more details on size and location. We do have an existing business sign at that corner, our pylon sign. The business identification sign is right on that corner as well. And we do have limited green space. So we would just like to understand a little bit better what the township's thinking and make sure that we can coordinate with our existing infrastructure, the limits of what you guys are asking for, and make sure that there's no conflicts caused by that. But we would be willing to work with the township for more details on what they had in mind. And then 27 talks about just some operational issues. There is a existing dumpster that sits adjacent to the car wash that we're maintaining its location. Chuck noted that in order for the trash truck to access that dumpster, it does drive across some of the existing parking stalls. As noted, Peter lives right next door. He's an owner-operator of these facilities. He can manage all that operationally, but yeah, the trash will be coordinated to be off-peak hours so that those parking stalls would be open enough to be able to facilitate trash, and we can add a note to the plan in that effect. But other than those topics, we have some waivers that I can review, but everything else in the letter would be a will comply. So I don't know if we wanted to go through the waivers or if you had questions about the site and operation before we get into the waivers, or what's the best way to proceed?
Well, thank you very much for the overview. I have a number of questions just about kind of site operation and design that I'd like to go to, and just want to get a sense then of my other planning commission members before we head into any waivers. So I think we'll do discussion first, Q&A, get some more information, and then we can go through the waivers. So I just wanted to start off, I could request some clarification on some of the circulation that you've discussed. So it looks like there's going to be an open curb cut on Haverford Avenue along the western corner of the property there. That's going to be closed, and it says a landscape planter. Is that proposed to be an above ground, like concrete planter, or are you excavating that out and turning that into in-ground planting bed?
Yeah, I think we're open to either. There's an existing small planter there today, and correct me if I'm wrong, that's like a landscape tie wall kind of planter. So we called it a planter because the original thought would just be an extension of the existing planter that's there today. I don't think our photos had a photo of that planter, did they? But right now it's an elevated planter, so we would look to build and extend that. But I think, there is the option to keep it low. I mean, I think whatever would be preferable.
Okay.
We could accommodate.
And then in terms of the circulation, so coming off of Lorraine, the intended circulation is for all customers to go through the back pay station and then loop through the site. Would it be possible, and are you allowing people to turn left off of Lorraine and then cutting in front of the exiting traffic coming out of the car wash to get to the vacuum stations?
They're free vac stalls, but you don't get to use the free vac stalls unless you're a paying customer, generally. So that's managed somewhat operationally.
Okay.
But the idea is that all customers go through the pay station, become customers of the car wash, and then you go to the vac stalls after you get your car wash. So you can either get your car wash and leave immediately and never vacuum, or you could do the car wash and then go to vac stalls, but you can't come to the site and just back and cut across.
Okay, so then explain to me the circulation, because you could theoretically turn off of Haverford Avenue into the site, because there's vac stalls that are proposed to remain in that western triangle. Or am I misunderstanding the,
Yeah, Peter can cover the operations.
okay, because it shows that along the SEPTA right-of-way, there's still gonna be those vac stalls remaining, and it looks like you can access that without going through the pay stalls.
That's correct. So right now, these are, my name's Pete Carricelli, and I'm the owner, by the way. Right now, these are self-serve and quarter operated, so people can use them 24 hours a day. We don't intend to change that at all. The flow will be restricted, so these customers can come in and use these and then leave. They will not be able to access the car wash, so we do not enter signs here and do not enter signs here. So the free vacuums that are available only when the car wash is operating are going to be available to the customers that travel through and make the left come out. So this will be an exit only out here.
And are you restricting it, is it two-way exit, left and right, out?
We're not intending to change any component of the Haverford right now.
Okay.
But the flow will be significantly reduced because the car wash customers will be entering off of Lorraine.
Off of Lorraine, okay. So off of Haverford, folks can come in and use coin-operated vacuums. The new vacuum stations that you're installing are free, but only free if you also buy a car wash.
Correct.
Okay. And then folks who are using the car wash, and then, so they can go through the building, exit out onto Lorraine, or they could turn right into the vacuum area. And then from there, are they then forced to exit out onto Haverford?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
It's one way in between the car wash exit and Lorraine, so you
It's one way.
you couldn't go back up to Lorraine after the free vacs.
okay, so
And this will
if
be
you
an
want the,
escape marked one lane too, if we get any vehicles that have debris in the beds or bike racks or roof racks that can't go through the car wash, they would leave. So there's no way in this way or this way.
okay, so that was my other question. So then that upper bridge area, can we zoom in a little bit?
They don't.
So that upper bridge area that enters into the coin vac area, that's going to be used by whom and how?
It'll be stanchioned off by traffic control devices and will only be used if a vehicle comes through this. Well, this will be attended as well with personnel. And if truck or vehicles do enter the property that can't be washed, they will be directed off-site that way.
Okay,
And that's it.
so it's like just an out valve
Exactly.
if somebody changes their mind or they don't have
We call it
an escape hatch?
Yes.
Okay. 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 Thank you, that was very helpful. So then the ash trees, I understand you're trying to salvage them. I mean, ash in this region, though, are so far gone, so I feel like that is a losing battle. Not that I want to advocate for getting rid of trees, but if you can't get rid of them, then they need to come down.
You can see in this picture here, I cut, the former owner of the house was having branches fall on his vehicle
Yeah.
consistently, so we cut all the dead growth back and injected them. Because they're older, mature trees, so we didn't want to.
Right.
We didn't have to, but, and so far if you drive by, you can see they're growing nicely right now.
Okay,
So hopefully we nipped it in the bud.
fingers
so to
crossed.
speak.
Okay.
That was bad, but.
Because my only question was, if they are in fact healthy trees, but if they do end up not making it, then I believe that they would need to be, and would have to get taken down. I believe they would have to be included in the tree replacement calculations.
Got it.
Yeah, we can discuss that. I was reviewing that a little bit today. We can discuss that with Shade Tree. I think if they're diseased and dying, they're not subject to the replacement tree criteria, but we can clarify that with Shade Tree.
I believe that's correct, but if we're saying that they're being treated and are actively growing, then I would not claim them as diseased or dying currently.
Right. I think we wouldn't want to take them down until they
There's no need,
became
yeah.
diseased.
Okay, well, I would recommend that be a point of discussion with the Shade Tree Commission then.
Yes.
Sure.
All right, and then I had a question as to what your preferred landscape plan was, and it's not this one, it's the other one
It's the second one.
that has the arborvitae along the SEPTA right-of-way. So you said so your proposed is to have the arborvitae along the SEPTA right-of-way, and then there's going to be a fence also next to the arborvitae.
It would be the busway, a post and rail fence, and then the arborvitae would be on our property inside of the fence.
Okay. I'm not sure what your separation distance is from the arborvitae and the fence, or what kind of arborvitae you're planning on planting. The issue that we see all the time is that folks will plant privacy hedges too close to a fence or too close to a property line, and it overgrows into sidewalks and it overgrows into fencing. So I would recommend that ultimately, I mean, this is for down the line, but planting that far enough away from the fence so that at their mature diameter, that they won't be growing into the fence or into the busway of SEPTA, because that just becomes a long-term maintenance nightmare for you to have to then go onto the SEPTA causeway to trim back those bushes.
Great point. Yeah, absolutely. We have plenty of room back there, so.
Okay.
I'm going to work with the shade tree to kind of, if we can, do some plantings there that would enhance the busway. I know it's a busway, but I know there's also a lot of residents that use it. So if we can green it up and kind of do a stepped version, we can even add to this plan. This is just kind of a base to show the concept.
I mean, there's also, like, arborvitae are great as visual buffers, but there's also a ton of native shrubs that you can plant that
Love to.
have flowering
Yep.
Benefits and pollinator benefits and
Wanna
serve
put
as
some bee
food
boxes back there, too, to be
sources
honest with
for, local flora and fauna. So,
Love to work with you on that.
well, shade tree might be better.
Okay.
I know enough to be dangerous. Service berry, I hear, is really good.
Surface berry.
But there's definitely lots of like native shrubs that offer better ecological benefits than just green giant arborvitae.
Fine.
And then I wanted to ask, so you had started to explain that there's limits to planting shade trees. You were commenting though just along Lorraine, correct?
Yeah, that was a specific area. There's limitations on both frontages. Lorraine is the worst of the two. There is a gas main there. The current paving on Haverford is actually all the way up to the street. We are cutting it back. There is some right-of-way there that the paving is within the right-of-way today. We are pulling that curb line back to create some green space around the frontage. But from a shade tree perspective, we do have vacuum stalls there and some utility runs there. And the width, though we got some green space, it's still quite narrow. And we do have our sign on that corner and this potential sign easement that the township was seeking. We are, one, concerned about there being enough room to add any trees there, and two, sight lines from Lorraine onto Haverford. The area where there's more green space, unfortunately, is closer to the intersection, which is worse for sightline obstruction.
Sure.
That's what I was going to say. I think that was
So
part
that's
of the
our
ordinance.
concern with, that's why we proposed the right number, but we were adding them in the green space in the rear to not have any utility conflicts, sightline conflicts, signage conflicts, and vacuum stall
Okay.
conflicts.
I do understand that there's a number of constraints and limitations there. I do think that this is a missed opportunity if we aren't able to add some additional, again, species appropriate landscaping. Understand that you might not have the space for a larger tree with conflicts with underground utilities, but it would be nice to kind of have a more visual buffer. If we're going to green the space, it just turns into like a weedy patch, and that just doesn't do anybody any good.
Exactly.
So I think it would be a missed opportunity if we didn't look at some additional vegetation opportunities that we can plant there, just some additional landscaping. So again, defer to the shade tree.
Even if it were shrubs instead of a tree or something you're saying.
Right, so, if a tree is not suitable there, just some, low-lying shrubs that reach a height of 2 or 3 feet, so they don't provide any sort of obstruction for motorists at the intersection, meet whatever easements that you have, but just kind of provide a little bit of softening of that visual into the site, because you're gonna have people vacuuming there. It's just also just a nice buffer if you're there at the vacuum to kind of feel like you have a little bit more distance and separation between you and the traveling vehicles on Haverford, because that gets to be a little bit of a speedway right there. So I think that might be just a nice amenity to add. So would recommend taking a look at that as well. Yeah, because this rendering, do you know actually what your area is? Because the rendering appears to show a more narrow vegetative strip. Yeah, so if you look there, it appears to be a more narrow vegetative strip than what your site plan shows.
So this was done prior to
Yeah, this
getting
was done
into the
during zoning.
design. Better.
As far as width of that green space.
These parking spaces would be 20 feet, so it looks like we have about 10 feet in here.
Yeah,
It's
so
just the
The
elevation.
right of way cuts across that angled line right there.
Right
is the
here,
right of
okay.
way.
That's the right-of-way line there?
Yeah, so half the green space is not private property.
And there's an elevation of about 1.5 feet change between the parking lot and the sidewalk, so we just have to take that into account. Maybe put a little knee wall, like a landscape wall with some plantings in front of it to dress
Okay.
it up.
Okay. Are you proposing to dedicate any additional right-of-way to the township?
There's
the
none
signal.
proposed on this plan, no.
Is that something that the township would seek additional dedication of right-of-way?
We'd have to talk about that a little further. There's probably not a lot of right-of-way there to start with, I believe.
And then the biggest concern would be the existing sign is on the corner today. So if we gave any right of way there, we would create an issue where the existing sign would then be inside the right of way.
Is that a non-conforming sign?
We didn't research it, but I would assume it likely is.
Was that not discussed at the zoning hearing board, the signage?
We aren't proposing any changes to it. We're leaving it as is, so
Okay.
it wasn't discussed.
Jamie, was there ever determination as to if it's existing non-conforming or not?
Not as it relates to the signage.
Okay, but you're saying you're not proposing to change it in any way, shape, or form?
I don't know if you're rebranding or you'd be
Just
changing out a
changing the
panel.
color, yeah.
Like the face of
color.
it?
Yeah,
Okay.
colors, freshen it up.
Does the township consider changing the face, like a substantive change to the sign for
No, a reface does not trigger.
Okay, all right, that makes that easy. All right, and then I wanted to talk, sorry guys, I have a lot of questions, but we'll open it up soon. I had a question about the water treatment that you were discussing. So it's my understanding that car washes in general are supposed to have closed loop systems. I'd appreciate some education on this because I don't know too much about it, but I thought that there was some closed loop systems, so, you know, all of the soap and, you know,
It's two different, we were talking about site drainage, like rain runoff versus the car wash water itself.
okay,
So they're different. So, and P can speak to it, but you see these little boxes right here underneath this front sidewalk? There's a concrete pad right here. Underneath there is the reclamation tanks. So basically, it is a closed loop system. Car wash goes into the reclamation tanks, filtered, and it recycles back in.
Correct. So the processed water stays within the facility here.
okay,
I don't know this to.
We were talking more about surface runoff from the pavement with the vehicle traffic, with the rainwater runoff, more so with the cars stacking at the skew lane. Car washes are viewed a little bit as a hotspot because obviously if you're going to the car wash, your car is dirty. If, you know, I wouldn't think people are getting their car washed in the rain, but with the rain runoff, if there is salt, et cetera, debris from the heavy vehicle traffic in the pay lane, et cetera, the rain runoff, what they want to do is before that discharges to the stream or into the ground to infiltrate, you filter it either through, you know, a vegetative filter or some kind of device. So what we were saying is this parking area drains into this general central area. We can move the drain over a few feet so that the runoff has to go through the grass. And then the
see.
grass just works as what we call a vegetative filter.
right,
And like any kind of debris or sand or anything that comes off the car, it'll get stuck in the grass before it washes into the storm drains.
I see,
But
okay.
that's separate than the car wash water as
Okay.
the process water from the car wash.
With this upgrade, we also have these green zones along the creek here that we don't have guardrails, so we would like to, you know, enhance that, and when we do that, we can try to extend and refresh these stone beds, which will also capture
Okay.
any runoff.
okay. Yeah, I mean, based on the existing condition photos, they're pretty weedy, they look a little rough. So improvements there would
And
be
currently,
beneficial.
all the use from the 5 different tenants I have back here is not ideal for runoff into the stream. So just by eliminating those uses, it was going to significantly enhance the quality of the runoff.
Okay, all right, thank you. And are you proposing any other stormwater on the site?
Now, it's a 40%, plus or minus 40% reduction in impervious with greening up that green space, so that actually is the stormwater benefit.
Okay. Thank you. Those are all of the questions that I have now. I might think of more as discussion goes on, but at this point, I'd like to open the conversation up to the rest of my planning commission members for any questions that they have. And Vic, we'll start with you.
Thanks for the clarity on all this so far. I just curious about lighting. You mentioned something about lighting, one of the items. What is it like presently? Like, what are the plans for any upgrades? I'm not over there too much at night.
Yeah, this,
Currently, there's lights everywhere, and they're basically giant spotlights
Yeah.
that we don't use.
Okay.
I tried to get the guys to use them when we were extended hours, but typically a car wash operation, as soon as the sun sets, it
Yeah.
ceases. We get the occasional 24-hour vac for a traveling vehicle. So there's a significant amount of lighting on site, but I haven't been using it. And so we are proposing just adding or replacing
we're doing
the
one
one pole
pole.
light there.
and then likely some wall packs along this back wall just to light this pay station area.
Which can be shut off
Which
after
can be shut
operations.
off.
You made a comment about like something about the town and working with the town. I just want to make sure that's clear and we give guidance on where to.
As far as the
The lighting
lighting,
poles, yeah, there was something that caught my attention.
Those are the recommended foot candles.
yeah, I mean,
We're under-
there is a
we're over.
comment in Chuck's letter just about, I think spillover onto the public roadways is a little bit high, so yeah, that's a will comply for us. We can move the
Okay.
poles around just to get the limits of the light levels, whether we lower the pole height or move it further inbound just to get the trespass into the right of way down to the levels that Chuck wants.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm going to piggyback really fast. Are you proposing to replace any existing lights on site with full cutoffs?
Sure. If we can get the condition that we need to satisfy the township, we can.
Yeah, I believe the only light we're proposing is this one. And we can work with this location to get the light levels where the township wants it. And yeah, we typically propose a full cutoff. I'll have to review the spec, but yeah, if the township wants a full cutoff, that's a standard head that we can use as a fixture for there. If that's what you
And since
guys
we're
want.
talking here too, that tree doesn't exist, so it was another tree we're planting.
Oh, that's a new tree.
This tree, yeah, this is the one.
And is that the only light pole that's on the site?
There's another
There's
one,
an existing one over here, I believe. Is it?
I think it's
It's on that
it's either
frontage.
here or here. And
Yeah.
this is one, we would just replace it with a much more efficient, better suited head.
Yeah, we aren't really touching anything on the left side of the stream.
Oh, it's
So
right
there
here.
are some existing lights.
This one right here.
There are some existing lights on that side. But all our improvements are for the car wash side of the street.
Okay. I think it would be beneficial if we could upgrade all of the lights to be full cutoff to be in compliance with township regulations. All right, thanks. Vic?
That was all my questions. Thank you.
I'm going to recuse myself from the discussion and vote for a professional conflict of interest.
Sure, I have a couple. So looking at the one rendering here, so like on, it looks like you're showing there's an existing fence along the creek, which kind of doesn't look very structural, but on this rendering, there's no fence. Is that the intent?
That's just an architectural rendering that was focused on the building, so they didn't work out those details. As noted, I think you're looking to add some additional guide rail and fencing for protection on that. It
Yeah,
doesn't
right.
exist today.
Correct, right now it's just a post and rail.
Gonna suggest that. I don't know if it's required or something from a safety side, but every time you see a creek like that, it's fall protection issue and, yeah, okay.
Absolutely. Liability for us as well, so we will do.
Yeah,
whatever
the site
we
plan
need.
shows the guide rails that are proposed. They just weren't picked up in the architectural rendering.
Yep.
There was one of the plans in here showing the fire entrance, how they would come around and go over one of those bridges.
Truck turning?
Are those things actually rated for a fire truck?
Have they ever gone over them before? They're all existing, so.
Existing conditions, we can
Okay, just something
evaluate.
to think about. In general, I like I frequent that trail and run up and down there a lot, so I'm very familiar with the fence that's kind of deteriorating and the storage area up there, so I kind of like the idea of the plantings. It'll be nicer. My one question kind of for Chuck, on your comment 3B about no tree, shall at maturity obstruct, obscure visibility of motorist or any intersection or driveway. Does that necessarily apply to here, since it's the SEPTA way and it's a long straightaway and it isn't a traditional vehicle? It's only the bus route and it's not at an intersection.
It is only the bus route, although emergency vehicles use that too, keep in mind. And most of it was geared towards the Haverford Road exit and everything. And if they do anything at Lorraine with planning there, although it'd be minimal, that they don't, mess up that site distance through there.
Okay, so it might not apply to this section that's at the top of their site?
Might not, no.
Okay, all right, cool. I had a question. So you said there's no net change in cuts and fills. Does that mean there's no change in the site grade, or are you
Now,
raising?
there is change in site grade, but where we fill one area, we cut in the other. It's basically, we balance the volumes of it.
Got it.
So if
Okay.
we have to fill 6 inches here, we cut 6 inches somewhere else.
That was my question. All right, perfect. I had a question. So you're talking about surface drainage water, trying to divert it to, what is that, the north end of the site?
Well, we
The
were
green
talking
space?
about, there's an existing drain in this corner where a lot of this kind of drains into a bowl. Right now, the low point is closer to where these parking stalls are. We can grade it such that we push it over into the green space, so we get some filtering from the grass.
So it's that green space, okay, because I was gonna say the northern part is higher in grade, so I didn't
Yeah,
know
all
how
that
you were gonna
drains.
push the surface water up there.
But once again, I mean, that's the benefit. All that water does still get to the stream, but now we're turning that all into a landscape green space, so that obviously helps runoff and the water quality from this
Because all the
area
stormwater on the
substantially.
southern part of this property just is in the low point paved area, right? It just goes
All of this
south to
sheet
Haverford
flows
Road.
to the stream. So yeah, what Peter wants to do is clean these areas up, improve the grass coverage, add the guardrail, but, a better vegetated cover there is gonna also offer some of that filtering.
Gotcha. Yeah, that was it. Okay.
We'll have significantly less runoff coming than currently from that area because it'll all be green. So it should hopefully capture that and reduce what's going on now.
Okay.
I just have some questions about the traffic flow. So right now, cars from Haverford Ave enter directly from Haverford Ave.
Correct, right through here.
And they'll have to turn onto Lorraine and then take a left into your facility.
Correct.
Have you considered traffic patterns during like school drop off and dismissal, and if trying to take that left when there's lots of school dismissal traffic, if that's going to back up into the intersection, or
The traffic from the car wash backing up into Lorraine?
more like someone trying to take a left against a line of school cars trying to get back onto Haverford Road?
No.
I would assume your peaks are all set from school traffic, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
what are your busiest car wash hours?
Saturdays, Friday afternoons, Saturdays are the peaks. And as long as the people queuing to go south on Lorraine at the light give a little bit of space, then the people should be able to
Yeah,
come in.
and
I
then my
haven't
other
seen it too
concern
much.
would just be for pedestrian safety around those times as well. If students are walking home and people are trying to make a left and watching the cars and not the kids on the sidewalk. I
Right.
Just maybe try and think through that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it currently operates that way, and we have big trucks going back into the back for the landscaping vehicles and whatnot, but I'll absolutely take that.
But I anticipate you'll see much more volume with this new plan. That's the goal, right?
Coming in, but not leaving,
Okay.
so it kind of just rebalances it a little bit. And it's going to significantly enhance the traffic impacts on Haverford Road as well, because we will have less people leaving during those high traffic times as well. And then you see we're kind of positioned between the light at Lorraine and then the light at, I don't know the other road by the
Further.
so they time the lights, and sometimes, they're stuck in between there as well. So we thought it was a net benefit just to reduce some of that exit traffic on the entrance and exit on Haverford. If you're coming east on Haverford and trying to make a left in at rush hour, it's very
Yeah.
questionable.
Okay.
So at least we'll be using that light for control.
That's all my questions. Thank you.
Just a couple questions. I'm going to focus on the Haverford Road side of it. The exit, as we're looking at this on the left, is that a left-hand turn or right-hand turn only, right in that area?
It's full access right now.
Full access to make a right or a left?
Yeah, any movement is permitted at that traffic corner.
Yeah, I was just thinking of backup. I was just thinking of like backup of one person making a left in a bed, you know what I mean? In
It
a
won't be
rush
entering
hour.
here anymore to the
Yeah,
site.
they'll be
Occasionally.
exiting where the.
Well, they can enter for the
Yeah.
coin operated access.
Yeah, that's what I was That was one concern that I had on there. And I saw like we talked about the street lighting, or the facility lighting. Is there any street lighting issues on that, Chuck? Like as far as,
Yeah, I looked today, there's currently a street light on Lorraine. I believe it's this pole, there's a street light. There's an existing street light on this corner, and then a pole along this frontage and a pole further down. So on this general frontage that you see here, there's 3 street lights on poles along Haverford, and then 1 existing street light along Lorraine. And we're not proposing to change anything for that.
you're good with that, Chuck?
I'm not aware of any lighting issues in that neighborhood, right?
Yeah, one random question is with the bus in the area, is there a stop on the property or right near it?
No, I think the bus stop is down over
Down
here.
further? Okay.
Over here, inside the,
I'm just looking at maps and just wondering.
or in the busway. I think it's in the busway down by where the bridge,
Okay, cool.
next
Just
to
making sure.
7-Eleven.
You know, 'cause people gathering, especially at the exit piece of it. Last question I had was really more operational, and I'm looking at your diagrams, and I'm sitting here thinking about kids, you know, with the hoses with the arches. I don't know if that's what or is that what you're envisioning, or is that standard equipment, which I'm talking about?
The vacuum stanchions here,
Yes,
what that does is it keeps the hose off of the ground, keeps them clean for the customers to use.
I get that. Or do they move? I guess is the question. 'Cause in my head right now, I'm thinking like, what happens once, you know, somebody moves it around out into the street? Like, is
It swings
the
backwards
arch
onto
itself
Haverford.
like,
Now, because they're fixed from, this is what we call a clean out area where the objects, this is fixed unit, it's like a pipe,
yeah,
just an arch pipe, and then the soft, no.
does it pivot?
No,
Thank you.
there's a soft hose that'll fit into the end right here and then swing back here, and you hang it on the post itself.
Okay.
So, and then because these are free in the evenings, we take them off. And so when we're closed, they won't be hanging there at all.
Okay.
And there's really no way to pull them forward onto the sidewalk because that's the limit of the hose itself.
Yeah, no, I get that. I was more worried about the metal object pivoting or going out
Oh,
into
no.
the street. Okay. Again, operational question, didn't know, you know what I mean, in between there, just thinking worst case scenario or so, you know, something like that. That's all the questions I have.
Right, thank you. Any other questions that came up as part of discussion that anybody wants to revisit on Planning Commission? Okay. So you had stated earlier that assume that everything that's in the township engineer's review letters will comply unless otherwise noted. Can we identify then what the otherwise noted discussion points are from Chuck's letter?
Well, there's the waiver request, which we can go through.
Yep.
But the items we discussed, and it relates more to, I think, more to some shade tree feedback, but, you know, the limits of the skip laurels, whether or not we extend underneath. The limit of the residential buffer extends into the root zone of the ash tree. So I think what Chuck is saying is that
I'm
that
sorry.
buffer planning should go to the limit of that property bend into the
Can you
triangle.
Identify what number that is in his letter for us to follow?
2, zoning 2. So this is the alternate plan. So there's one option where we add more skip laurels, but as you can see this, it's hard to see, but this is the limit of the ash here.
I see, yeah.
So we would have some trees underneath that. The
Okay.
current plan as submitted stops those skip laurels short so that we're not disturbing. We tend to assume the root zone is the drip line. So you see we stop them short, but this is the corner of the property. So there's a question of whether or not we extend those buffer shrubs all the way to the full limit. But that would put them, you know, within the root zone and drip line of the existing tree.
What I'd like to do too is replace the very decrepit post fence. It's a picket fence right now with a nice maybe 6 or 8 foot Trex, which softens, dampens sounds, and we can make it a real true buffer. And then we can dress it up with any vegetation we can get in that he says won't impact the tree.
Would the township permit an 8-foot fence? It has to be 6 foot max? Okay, 6 foot.
Got it.
And did you discuss this with the ZHB?
No, the ZHB had a condition to landscape and buffer that during the land development process. So I think if the interpretation is the shrubs have to go all the way to comply with zoning, we'll do that. We're just concerned about working underneath the ash tree. But,
Yeah.
if code requires us to do that, we can do it.
Other than the skip laurels, yeah. I mean, I guess whatever would be planted would have to meet the definition of what a buffer planting strip is. Is not less than 5 feet in width. Does the township have a recommendation on this?
No, I mean, it just has to comply with that code requirement. I think it's all in the definition of the buffer,
Yeah,
vegetative buffer.
yeah.
I mean, typically, we don't get into anything more. We let Shade Tree also speak to some of it, but really, when it comes to that, it's just what's in the code.
Yeah, I mean, since this is a zoning regulation and not a SALDO regulation, you would need to comply with this or go back to ZHB, and I don't think you want to do that for a couple of feet worth of buffer plantings. So I would recommend getting Shade Tree's input on, what's the appropriate thing, but ultimately, I think you would need to come into compliance with that.
Yeah, we will comply. As you noted, it's zoning, so we don't really have an option.
Right, okay.
3B was another one that we talked about. This one we believe is an existing nonconformity. That's the planting along Lorraine Avenue.
Yeah, okay.
Not adding those trees. We're not changing the paving there. We're restriping it, but the paving limits stay the same. So, as we noted, we're providing the right number of trees, just alternate locations since we cannot plant them there. Number 5 of zoning was really just discussion that we were just letting you know the fence we're replacing, so there's no real, that's a will comply. That was just some narrative. On the subdivision, page 3, 8, 9, and 12 were the new waivers that we added. That's the 400-foot utility mapping, the no cuts and fills in the floodplain area, and number 12 relates to the open space dedication. Number 10 was also a waiver, but that was in the original waiver request. That's the same thing, the shade trees on both sides of a street. So that relates to the frontage treatment of Haverford and Lorraine that we spoke about. And then page 4 under stormwater, 19 with the hotspot, we agreed that we're going to comply, shifting that inlet over into the grass area. And 21, we will add the riparian buffer limits to the plan, but we wanted to note that there are improvements proposed within that riparian buffer. So we were not, Chuck and I discussed if there was any formal approval or, it's not a SALDO provision, so it's not a waiver, it's a stormwater code issue. So we didn't know if the planning commission or the township had to formally approve any type of disturbance within that riparian buffer. And then general were just notes. We will agree to the operation of the dumpster, but that's a will comply. And then we noted that we'll notify SEPTA for the demolition of the landscape building. So it's really the riparian buffer, the hotspot change, and the landscape issues. And the open space.
And Chuck, do you have any comments you can share, your thoughts on the solution that they're proposing for the hotspot issue?
Well, as you can see, mostly a paved area. There's not too many places you can put anything through there. So it seems like it's the logical best place to do that, being that they're creating that green area there and it's adjacent to an inlet. So that's what, that's why we both, myself and Alex, both thought that was probably the best location. You can look at something, on some of these other areas adjacent to the parking lot, but it's tough to get anything there. Mm-hmm. It's on the upstream side, basically. So I think in this situation, it would be the best. It would be nice if it was bigger, but, it is what it is.
Yeah, then the only other thing I'll add, which Pete noted, currently that area still operates as part of the car wash and the landscape yard, but you have all the runoff from that upstream triangle area flowing onto that pavement, picking up whatever's on that pavement, and then flowing into the stream. Now that that area is becoming grass, the run on from that upstream area onto the car wash pavement, you're not dealing with nearly as much upstream flow. So it's easier to trap that stuff in that small green area. It would be much more efficient because it's dealing with a much lower volume of water because we're creating all that upstream area, converting it to grass. So that's going to absorb into the ground up, in the triangle itself, and greatly reduce how much water is coming down towards the stream from that upstream area. So it'll be a big improvement there as well.
The restoration area that you're proposing in the upper kind of triangle area, what's your plan, since most of that is some sort of impervious surface? Are you excavating down a certain depth, amended soils? What's the plan for restoration there?
Yeah, I believe it's just removal of the gravel and buildings, et cetera, re-topsoil, and plant it. I don't know if we weren't necessarily proposing any formal amended soils. We could discuss some options there, but really it was a removal of the gravel and the buildings and the storage facilities, remove those, re-topsoil, and then vegetation, other than the trees that are proposed.
I can only imagine that the area underneath all of that is going to be very heavily compacted. And while I certainly agree that grass is going to do a much better job of kind of slowing down and infiltrating some of that stormwater, I would have concerns that the compaction of the soil underneath all of that area is going to limit any of that ability to happen. Grass by itself isn't necessarily the best. It has a very shallow root system, so it doesn't do a lot in terms of infiltration, and it won't do too much in terms of like breaking up a lot of that compacted soil. So the topsoil will allow the grass to grow. So I would just recommend, if you can excavate further, scarify underneath the topsoil, do whatever you can to help break up whatever that compaction is, because I'm sure it's a
We
mess.
usually do like an 8-inch deep, like ripping with a hook or a bucket just to break up the soil. We
Yeah.
can do some scarification.
Okay. Did anybody have any additional questions on the engineer's review letter? Otherwise, I would propose that we move to discussion of the waivers. Good? Good? Okay. All right. So before we move on, Chuck, is there any concerns that you have about any of your other outstanding comments and the fact that they've stated that they will comply with all the outstanding comments?
No, as Alex mentioned earlier, we did have a conversation this afternoon about the majority or the bigger items that were discussed here also, and sort of came to the conclusion that those, the what he's proposed today or tonight is what we were thinking.
Okay.
I'm in agreement pretty much with what they're proposing at this point.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So let's go through the waivers.
Yeah, so we submitted a revised June 10th letter that's in your packet, and I believe you guys were also provided a copy. So as we noted, the revision of that was the 3 items from Chuck's letter that we noted and discussed, so I'll go through them. What's not included in the June 10th letter, which was mentioned in the introduction, is there's an additional waiver to 160-4A to permit, we're seeking prelim final approval together. So I believe you guys typically grant that as a formal waiver to allow the vote to be prelim and final together. The first waiver on the letter, in addition to the prelim final, is section 160-4E5I, which is a traffic impact study. Once again, we're seeking a waiver of the traffic impact study. There was a waiver, or a traffic, I forget the title of it, but it was a traffic impact assessment that was submitted by TPD as part of the zoning application, which spoke to the benefits of the traffic circulation improvements and the additional queue provided on site, et cetera. We're asking for a waiver for that study to meet the intent of the traffic impact study. Once again, this is an existing operation. We're not really enlarging the building or changing the use. So we're seeking a waiver to allow that study that was provided to meet the submission requirements of the traffic impact study. Waiver number 2 is 160-4E5E4, which is, we spoke about in the review letter, that's the 400-foot limit for the utility mapping. 3 is 165B4F. I think we did this out of an abundance of caution. Like we noted, there is existing street lighting on Lorraine and Haverford that we believe is adequate, but we are not proposing any new additional street lighting, so we're seeking a waiver to, I guess, leave the street lighting as is on Lorraine and Haverford. Number 4, 165B5, I, 2 and 5. This we spoke about during the review letter. This is to permit cuts and fills in the floodplain. We recognize that a condition of that waiver or condition of the approval would be securing a letter of map revision through FEMA and a Chapter 105 permit through DEP for work within the floodplain and floodway of the creek.
If I can just pause real fast before we move on from that one, what happens in the event that you don't get the approval for the map amendment?
Then we can't do any work, and it likely would make the project infeasible. I mean,
Okay.
it is a threshold issue of this project to be able to do the work in the floodplain. So if FEMA would deny it, we would have, I mean, we have to get the FEMA approval for the project to be a project.
Okay.
Number 5 is 160-5B, 5G. This relates to storm sewer sizing. Once again, this is private property, not a public road, but the township standard is a minimum 15-inch pipe size. The existing pipe that is on site that we talked about moving the drain into the green space is smaller than a 15-inch pipe. So we are seeking to maintain that existing pipe. Once again, we don't know if it's a waiver because we're not really, well, I guess now that we're moving the pipe, we would propose new piping. But that piping would be proposed to match the existing 6-inch drain size that is there today. So it's less than the 15-inch, so we need a waiver for that. Waiver 6 is 165B6. This is the street tree issue we talked about with the frontage along Lorraine and Haverford, and the relocation of those number of street trees back to the rear triangle as opposed to planting them along the street. We did discuss looking at alternatives for some screening along Haverford. Number 7 is section 165C 2 and 4. That is the open space and park and rec fee dedication waiver that we spoke about with the letter. And then, once again, it's under the stormwater code, so we do have one listed. Once again, this is on the abundance of caution, and I'm not even sure it's a waiver since it's not a saldo issue. But as we noted, there is a substantial reduction in green space. I believe it's 39% for the site, and it doesn't generate any stormwater requirement. We're doing the upgrades for the water quality, et cetera. But with that, there is a drainage permit application or a stormwater permit application that's required to be submitted. Just by the nature of the limited scope of this project, there are some submission requirements that will be a part of that that really aren't applicable since we're not proposing any stormwater facilities and the site doesn't generate any demand. So we just wanted to, I guess, seek a waiver from any submission requirements for checklist items that, we aren't able to submit because there is no stormwater proposed. But we can work, I don't know that that's a waiver per se. I think that's something we'll just work through with Chuck's office to make sure he has a complete application to address whatever he needs from a stormwater side. Those are the limits of the waivers.
Okay, thank you. So I think the last one, because it relates to stormwater management and it doesn't fall within our purview to
Right, I don't think it's a
grant
waiver.
that as a waiver, I would be inclined to just limit that from any of our recommendations.
Understood.
I'm just rereading it again to see if this is anything that we would want to, because this would be something that the commissioners could make recommendations on. And otherwise, it's an administrative thing that would have to be worked out with the
Like I
township
said,
engineer.
we'll work with Chuck's office to make sure he has what he needs to review the drainage permit application.
Yeah, I would say for this one, we would just kick it over to the engineer to make sure that everything is in compliance. So any permits that you would seek and any reviews that would need to happen would just need to be approved by the township and the township engineer. Is that satisfactory?
Yes.
Do you support that? Okay. You support what they're asking for the exemption?
I'm sorry?
Do you support what they're asking for the exemption?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's fine. But we'll work with that with them at the staff level and get that resolved.
Okay. Now, we have talked in recent past about, sorry, I'm just pulling it up, with the open space. Oops. 5C. Does not show up. Sorry, stand by. 5C. Five C 2 4. So for this one, what we've done in the recent past is that if you're seeking the waiver, we also have the option to provide a fee in lieu. So if you're seeking a waiver from this, I haven't heard yet if that would be then what you would be asking for is to pursue the fee in lieu, or are you requesting both a waiver from this requirement and a waiver from the fee in lieu?
Correct. We're requesting a waiver from the open space requirement in totality. So either the dedication of the land or paying a fee in lieu because it's an existing business within the township and not creating any new use in the township.
Okay. Okay, I see. So C2 and C4, C4 being the fee in lieu, C2 being the dedication of land. Okay. So really, this is like two separate things. So I would actually break these out as two separate waiver requests. We'll do C2. So 7A would be C2, 7B would be C4. Okay. Okey doke. All right, Planning Commission members, do you have any questions or want to have any additional discussion on the waivers? Otherwise, we can just go through them one by one and kind of get a straw poll. And then if everyone feels more or less in agreement, we can proceed with the recommendation in totality, or we can vote on these individually. If anybody has any strong opinions one way or the other.
I think totality would be fine.
Okay. Yeah, that work? Yeah, okay. Okay, so for the first one, we have the traffic impact study. Does anybody have any strong objections for or against the granting of this waiver, or recommending granting of this waiver? We're just gonna, here, how about we do this? We assume that everyone is in support of the waiver unless otherwise noted. Okay, so is everybody more or less in support of this, this waiver for the traffic impact study? And this would be for section 160-4E5I.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. We also have the one that we added, which is not on the waiver request list, which was 160-4A. Is there a subsection or it's just 160-4A?
It's just 164.
Okay. And that was for the joint preliminary final land development.
Oh, yes.
Do we support this?
Yes.
Okey doke. Next one. So we're gonna call 1 is the traffic impact study. 1A is the new one that we're adding, 160-4.A. Okay, 2 is section 160-4E5E4. And this is for showing the surrounding features within 400 feet of the site. Any objections?
No objections.
None.
Okay. Number 3, section 160-5B4F for street lighting. And again, this is related to, as you said, out of an abundance of caution, but this is mainly for street lighting, and this is related to part of the continuous improvement to on-site lighting is upgraded throughout the replacement and addition of luminaires, including wall-mounted fixtures, area lighting within parking and drive aisles. I would actually recommend this waiver with the additional provision that we recommend that the lights on site are upgraded to meet full cutoff fixtures to meet all township lighting requirements.
Took the words out of my mouth.
Thank you.
Good.
Yep, okay. Okay, so 3 with that caveat. Number 4, section 160-5B5I25. This is grading within a floodplain.
So this might be 2 as well, because 2 and 5 are separate. 2 is cuts in the floodplain and 5 is fills in the floodplain.
Okay, great. So we'll do 4A will be for 160-5B5I2. And then 4B will be 160-5B5I5.
Yes.
This is, reading this back is going to be really fun. Okay, so one is for cut and fill, and the other is grading, you said?
One is for cutting in the floodplain, and the other one is for filling in the floodplain.
Okay, so 2 is for cutting, 5 is for filling.
I believe that's the order.
However they're sorted. And now this one, as you mentioned, there is a significant amount of engineering, and FEMA's involved in this.
Correct.
So this is kind of your plan is contingent on FEMA at this point reviewing.
Yeah, I think it would be a waiver subject to issuance of a letter of map revision from FEMA would be what I think the appropriate condition would be, which basically makes the waiver subject to getting the FEMA approval.
Yes, I would agree with that. So we would be looking at recommending approval of the waiver subject to the FEMA approval letter. And then this as well, I wanted just to ask, so no net change to the floodplain. So we're saying that there's going to be no net change to the floodplain. So does that mean then that you have to flood-proof the building? Do you have to do a wet flood-proofing or a dry flood-proofing to this building at all? Or would you not have to do that because you would get the no net change or the letter of map amendment?
Yeah, I mean, I think that might be a discussion topic with FEMA. The building is in the floodplain today. We are remapping the floodplain. We're changing the line, but the building is not being added into the floodplain. So we're proposing no change to the building, but I think obviously that'll be part of the FEMA review. But our argument is that it is in the floodplain today, and the only change we're doing is remapping the floodplain because of the removal of the landscape contractor's building.
Okay. Okay. Ultimately, this comes down to FEMA, so I don't think, so this kind of goes outside of the purview of this planning commission. But I think, as we stated, so the waiver would be then subject to FEMA's approval. Does anybody have any additional thoughts, comments, questions? That one sounds good to everybody? Yes? Okay. Okay. And that would be 4A and 4B, since those are two separate ones. Okay, number 5. Thanks, audience, for sticking through this. I know this is what you wanted to hear tonight. Section 160-5B5G, related to storm sewer pipes. Any thoughts on this one?
No concerns, no issue.
Chuck, did you have any? Oh, Chuck just walked away. Does Chuck have any objections to this? No, okay. Okay, that one's good. Moving on, number 6, section 160-5B6 for shade trees. And this is related, as we said, to the landscaping along Haverford Avenue and Lorraine Street. I would recommend, based on our conversation tonight, I would recommend the recommendation to grant this waiver subject to the evaluation of additional native plantings along the SEPTA right-of-way and the consideration of additional landscaping along in the new landscape strip along Haverford Avenue, and subject to review by the Shade Tree Commission.
Yep,
Does that capture
issues. Yeah.
what we like? Anything additional to add to that?
No.
Okay. Okay, number 7, we said we're going to break up into 7A and 7B. So 7A will be related to section 160-5C2, dedication of land for recreation. So this would be the dedication portion of the land. So the waiver for the dedication of the recreation land. Thoughts on this one?
I'm fine with it.
Fine with this one?
We're good.
Okay, so it looks like we support this one. 7B, Section 160-5C4, this is the fee in lieu of land for recreation. So this would be a calculation to determine what the recreation land would be, and the applicant would be required to provide that fee in lieu, and that would be then given to the township for recreation purposes. I have thoughts on this one. I'm curious what your thoughts are.
I'd be okay granting the waiver for it, given that there's no real change in site. They're improving the back end of it. That's my thoughts on it.
Okay.
I agree with the comments.
Adam, Jen?
Nod.
Okay. I personally would not support the waiver of the fee in lieu. I understand the rationale and the ask, and I appreciate the greening of the site. I do feel, though, that this is an opportunity for us, anytime that we have new development or redevelopment, it's an opportunity to kind of invest in our community and provide some additional funds to help boost recreation and open spaces in the township, which we value greatly. All the residents get to benefit from it. We welcome our business owners, and we want the business to be part of the community and contribute to the community, not suggesting that you don't already. But I would not support this particular waiver. But it sounds like we have a majority in favor of the waiver.
Support the waiver.
Okay, so this one,
I think your comments are really good and thought out, and the limited development here, I think they're doing a lot of other things to improve it, and I think it's okay.
okay. So it sounds like we have a majority here then for recommending 7B related to the fee in lieu. Okay, and then that actually wraps up all of the waivers. The other one that we had discussed was the stormwater management, which is not part of our waiver request, and we're just going to kick that one over to the engineer. So at this point, we now have the application before us. We have a waiver request, which we have stated that we would be in support of for a joint preliminary final. So at this point, may I entertain, well, are there any other questions or comments? Okay. And yes. So at this point, I would like to open it up to public comment. So we've had our discussion, we've discussed the waivers, so before we take our final vote on anything, I would just like to ask if there's anybody in the audience here who would like to make a public comment related specifically to this land development application. Sounds great. All right. Oh, a nice applause. Okay. Hearing no public comment related to this application, may I entertain a motion then from the Planning Commission for this application?
I make a motion to approve with the caveats noted. I recommend approval. Recommend approval with the caveats.
And the waivers that we've discussed?
Yeah, and the waivers discussed.
Okay, thank you. So Vic has a motion on the table to recommend preliminary final land development plan of this application contingent or conditioned upon the discussion items and the waiver requests as we've discussed. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Steve seconds. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Yes.
Okay, Kim abstains. Otherwise, it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You have your recommendation of approval. Good luck with your project, gentlemen.
Isn't anyone going to say anything about the trees that are overgrowing his house? I actually want to comment on that.
That's outside of the scope of this project. No comment there. Good luck with FEMA.
Thank you.
All right, are we good? Do you need a 5-minute break, a 3-minute? Okay, we're going to take a quick 3 to 5 minute break, and then we'll reconvene for our next agenda item. Thank you. All right, thank you. We're going to resume our meeting. Our next order of business is a discussion of the zoning reorganization. With us, we have Adam Tecza from IMEG. He is our planning consultant who has been working on this.
Adam is going to give us an update. So this is now the third meeting that we are reviewing this draft. And Adam is going to go ahead and give us an update where we are with this.
Great, thank you very much. For the agenda today, I am going to once again just give a quick overview of the changes that have been made in this document for anybody who hasn't received them. This is a summary of all the documentation that is on the website. And then I'm going to go through a list of the review of the substantive comments that we received since the last meeting. I'm not going to go back over the comments that we discussed in the previous meeting. And then we're going to have a sort of question and discussion here. So the changes. Again, this is a reorganization, right? The idea here is to make it simpler, to organize it logically and more intuitively, and easier to understand and administer. A big part of this has been a recognition, I think, by everybody that trying to understand this ordinance as it currently sits is hard enough. If we were trying to have real substantive conversations about what to permit or not, it'd be very difficult using the ordinance. So the first step is really just to get into a place that we can all understand it and use it. So one of the big things that has been changed here is updated definitions. One thing is just an ability, it's easy now for us to improve language and add illustrations for clarity. We have extracted all of the standards that were buried in definitions. It's sort of like a bad practice to put certain requirements and definitions, but it's something that, sometimes creeps in. So we've taken them out and put them into the relevant section. We've put in a lot of new modern definitions. We've had a lot of conversation about this. Everything from like fitness studios to green roofs to garden centers. This is so that we all have a common language as we start talking about the substantive updates. And then most importantly, we have brought the ordinance up to sort of a legal standard, because you're going to go through an adoption process here. We don't think it would be responsible for you to essentially use definitions, really is where we did this, that would put you at risk. So things like family, care facility, group home, adult commercial uses have all been updated to bring you up to state standards. One of the big things that you will see here that is new and different are the use tables. These make it a whole lot easier for you to not only see what is permitted and understand what is permitted in a single zone, but also to compare what's permitted, in this case, across different commercial zones. So again, I think it's really going to support our conversation about substantive updates. Similarly, we have put all of the bulk standards into tables. Again, this is going to be much easier to use in your day-to-day operations, but it's also going to be easier for us to talk about, easier for us to compare and contrast different districts. The other thing that we have done is sort of brought your code up to a sort of modern standard in using use categories rather than use lists. So if you go into your ordinance right now, you guys have spelled out every single possible use that maybe you thought of under the sun. That's great in a way that it sort of gives you a lot of specificity, but it's very rigid and likely to break. So if you don't list something in that list, then it becomes a problem for you if a new use comes online. So this is an example of a bunch of use lists that were in different districts that we consolidated into sort of a use group, which is office and then defined. So in this case, all of these uses are then grouped into this definition of office. This has been out for a while now, are a series of supporting documents to help people understand this ordinance. We very much understand this is a large document. It took us a long time to get through it and to reorganize it. So we provided these supporting documents to help people try to navigate and understand the changes. I know one thing that has been requested, and I understand the request for this, which would be sort of like a red line document of the changes. That really isn't feasible because of the scale of the reorganization. We really, move things into whole new tables and sections. it essentially would be a document that is crossed out all the way through, and then all of the changes underlined. So you can sort of think of these supporting documents as a form of track changes, right? So one thing that you have here is you have a document that shows all of where your current sections are, and then where they moved in the new ordinance. So if you were trying to understand like, hey, I really care about this section of the ordinance, where do I go to find it, right? Obviously you can sort of find and in like an online document, but this will sort of get you to where you need to go. The other big thing that I think is hopefully very helpful is we have put together a document that shows all of the current definitions and the proposed definition changes there so that you can do a one-to-one comparison. This isn't exactly a red line, but you know, it's essentially the same thing. And then the other thing is unfortunately with this change log is it really is designed to help users find where current provisions went, right? So it's sort of organized, if you look on the left-hand side, numerically along the list of current ordinance numbers and not organized around the sort of the current ordinance as it would be. So the other thing that we did is we put in a change log for uses. So I talked about previously, you had all of these sort of list of uses that were put in. What we did is we tried to define what those look like in the new ordinance or what group those would have fallen into. We also identified where all of those were permitted, listed as conditional uses or special exceptions in the ordinance so that you can really compare and make sure that everything lines up in the new ordinance. And a few people I'll get to today had caught some places where we need to make updates. So what I want to turn to now is just a review of the questions and comments since our last meeting. One reminder, in the last meeting we had said that we were really only going to be focusing on the substantive comments about the reorganization that came in, that we weren't going to review sort of all of the questions about process and things like that. However, I do want you to know that you've got a memorandum detailing the full summarizing the full set of comments, including those process comments and those related to phase 2. So there were a lot of comments. I would say actually the majority of the comments were comments that were talking about things that we're not addressing, we're not changing in this ordinance, but were maybe related to things that were brought up in the comprehensive plan. So what we want to make sure everybody knows is we are hearing those, we are seeing those, and those are going to be summarized. So we're going to put that up on the website. We were literally getting comments in like this morning, and so I kept sending Jamie updated PDFs, and I figured, let's just wait for all the comments to come in, and then we will put that up on the website. The other thing that has been updated on the website is a lot more detail, hopefully clarifying the public engagement process and making sure people understand what that's going to look like. So in terms of substantive comments, there were a lot of questions here about the definition of family. There were actually a fair number of, I thought, sort of like very well thought out suggestions about how to update, you know, the definition of family. There were questions about this other legal relationships. There were some concerns about for-profit foster care. Some people actually suggested broadening the definition of family rather than narrowing it. We really feel very strongly that the definition that we're providing meets the legal standard of family. This is a highly litigated issue. We have talked with your solicitor about this several times. I think he is comfortable with this definition, so we do not suggest making any changes at this time. In terms of foster care, this is sort of a great example of this. Somebody suggested that we need to add a definition for foster care home and sort of start setting some standards around that. Legally, you can't treat a licensed, foster care home differently than you can't exclude it from residential zones in single-family residential districts. So saying like, hey, we're going to define it separately and regulate it separately sort of sets you up for litigation in that way. So again, we don't recommend making that change right now. One of the comments that came up here was about telecommunications equipment. The commenter noted that it's sort of like convoluted. It is indeed convoluted. What I basically want to summarize here is that there was a cross-reference in the new document in section 182.1228. It basically was a self-referencing cross-reference. It referenced that same section. Once that is updated to reference this section 182.405, then it would essentially address the commenter's concern about telecommunications equipment being required to meet the area and bulk standards in the district. Another person brought up a question about catering, asking for clarifications about whether it is permitted in the office district. I think we incorrectly categorized catering establishments in that use change log as retail services. That was not the intent. So we would recommend updating 182.604 use regulations to permit catering only in the C3 district. Once you do that, it'll be fairly clear that it is not permitted in the office district, which would align the proposed ordinance with your current ordinance. Again, another comment about sort of catering came up, very similar way. We had a discussion here, and I believe a planning commission member who's not here had asked for us to investigate, the definition of woodland. I am not going to read this. You all have this out there. But basically, the question was around how do you define woodlands? We had sort of a general definition in there. I did some research. I think it was either Chester County or Montgomery County had put out some good research and some documentation about how to define woodlands, gave some references to some other zoning ordinance to look through for definitions. We reviewed that, and basically what we settled on is this definition, which would limit it to areas of a quarter acre or more. So my primary concern would be you wouldn't want a small, you would not want a small grove of trees in your backyard, for example, to be considered a woodland. And so this is seems like a sort of standardly accepted definition of it. ADUs, there was a suggestion that we add a definition for ADU. ADU is not currently defined in the ordinance, and it's not planned for phase 2 part of the process. If at another point in time you all decide to, include ADUs as something that you want to regulate, I certainly suggest adding that definition, but it's not part of your comprehensive plan and therefore isn't part of phase 2. There was a comment about medical clinics, and one of the things that we had done, and this was a good catch, that we had actually included some regulations around the hours of operation within the definition. We actually suggest that we take that out and not do that, not change that, and that what we do is we start to consider the addressing of time in the operations of like medical clinics and a lot of other sort of uses like that as part of phase 2. I think that would be the appropriate way to handle that. Sorry, the header on this one is incorrect. I was copying my slides and reusing them. Here, I think this was a comment that was also brought up in the meeting, a concern about changing, there's like rules to the building depth, air, height, and similar dimensional standards. It was basically the definition of a lot, and we talked about, it going up. That does not change the definition of how tall a building can be. It does not change your right. It's really just a definition of what a lot is. A comment around data centers and whether they were intentionally left out of the permitted use change log. This just goes back to the comment that we have a number of uses that we have added into the definition section. We have not decided where or how to regulate those. We're not changing there. They're there for us to have a place to have a conversation about when we go into phase 2. So no changes. Data centers have not been permitted or not permitted in this ordinance. There was a comment about solar energy equipment, basically making a distinction, which I thought was, very insightful. There's the idea that there should be a distinction between sort of like accessory solar energy systems that you might find in your house versus like on-site commercial uses, and sort of asking maybe we should have two definitions of those. I think the definition of solar energy equipment is fine to cover both of those, but certainly as part of phase 2, the idea of making that distinction is something worth exploring a little bit more as you regulate solar energy equipment. And green design and green building standards is part of your comprehensive plan, and therefore is part of the phase 2. There was a comment about mobile homes and sort of whether or not we had changed the regulation of mobile homes. And how it was. This actually triggered 3 suggested changes. One is that we suggest updating 182.404, which is the residential permitted use tables, to correct it so that mobile homes and mobile land development are listed sort of explicitly as permitted in the R5. I believe they were listed as conditional use in the proposed ordinance. But in doing that, one thing that I realized is that there was a section in the definition of mobile home land development, which really should be in the definition of mobile home. And what this definition was is a clarification on modular housing units and whether or not they are considered mobile homes or single family units. And then there was another question about the conversion of single family dwelling into 2-family dwelling units. We didn't see any change in this. It's currently permitted. There's one thing that may be a little bit confusing is that there is a section 182.604 and 182.208 that's sort of further in the document, and that if you're not looking up at the use tables, you're not going to make the connection between that. So with that, we have provided, I believe, all of you with a detailed list of suggested changes to the ordinance, and we've tried to sort of list them as like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That covers all of the suggested changes that we have discussed in the past 2 planning commissions. And our hope with that is that as part of your all's deliberation, you all can use that as a way of saying like, yes, we are suggesting these changes, or no, and you can just reference them by number if it makes things easier.
Thanks, Adam. I really appreciate the overview, the update, how we got to where we got, and just all of your efforts to incorporate all of the comments and feedback that you received, not just from the Planning Commission, but from also all of the residents who have submitted comments over the past couple of weeks. So I just wanted to acknowledge that effort and the transparency with which you've created these documents to showcase exactly how we've been addressing those comments, questions, and feedback that we've received. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
So I will ask then, so this is now, as we said, the 3rd opportunity that the Planning Commission has seen this, this draft. As I understand it, the memorandum that has these amendments that we just reviewed, and again, we reviewed all of these in detail at our last meeting.
Yes.
So this is everything that we've already discussed here at the Planning Commission. But as I understand it, this is going to then serve as the addendum to the draft. So can you walk us through, or maybe Jamie, the procedural kind of next steps for how this is going to get incorporated into the existing draft, these amendments?
Yeah, so we're still working through with your solicitor whether or not we would update the entire draft with these, and then they would go to the commissioners for, review and discussion. There's sort of two ways we could update the draft, or we could just append these as your recommendation, right? As a reminder, you all don't approve or not, you're giving recommendations to the commissioners on this. And then they could, if they wanted to, accept your recommendations or make modifications to your recommendations, and go forward with a plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, with whatever direction the planning commission does decide to go with these addendum to the published plan that's out there right now, that would all go to the county planning commission once again for their review and would have a 30-day review time. So however you guys decide, these would change the document that is out there and published today, whether it's just, like you said, an amendment to, or whether it's actually physically in the document itself and then republished. That will all go back to the County Planning Commission for a 30-day review before it would come to the Board of Commissioners for their public hearing.
And if we are going to amend the document on your recommendation, the one thing that I would say is if you would make a recommendation to update the numbering and lettering of the document. There are a couple of times when a paragraph doesn't start with a number, and it was just or a letter. So it's a formatting issue with Word when it comes out, and so it would just be updated accordingly.
Okay.
All right. Those are typically covered under sort of like spelling errors and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. So does that make sense to the planning commission members? So any questions, Vic?
So there's two options to go about it. And we'll discuss those options.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. The options in terms of if it gets amended or the addendum, or I think that's the solicitor ultimately would decide. Well,
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I think that our solicitor would weigh in as to whether or not this would get incorporated or if this would serve as an addendum. I think,
Great.
what we're being asked tonight is to just go through these amendments that we've discussed at the last meeting. So this is just a summary of what we've already discussed and kind of agreed to, and just get kind of final clarification from Planning Commission that these are in fact the amendments to the draft. So the draft as it was published a few months ago that we've reviewed twice before, we've provided the feedback. These are the amendments. We're being asked to just validate these amendments, and then that would serve as the recommendation that we would proceed with.
And just one point of clarification, that document also includes the recommended changes I've suggested tonight as well.
Okay,
So it
thank you.
includes both last week's, and I believe the memorandum that you all have at the end, there's a table in that, and that table includes a date of the planning meetings that we discuss it. So the ones that are labeled from last month are there, and the ones for this month are there, just to make it, but it's not in the proposed suggested changes.
All right, and this larger document, this memorandum, this is a summation of all of the recommendations that you've received.
All of the comments, recommendations, thoughts, ideas, anything that came in, we basically summarized it. And again, we'll post that on the website tomorrow once we've get the final set of comments that have come in. It would not surprise me if we got a couple, like an hour or so ago.
So to be clear, and for the audience to understand, so what's going to be published is that there is actually then going to be a draft of all of the comments received, not just from the Planning Commission, but all of the community as well, so everyone can see what everyone has been saying.
Yes, I mean, to be clear, we're not publishing the comments verbatim. We're publishing a summary of those comments.
Thank you,
Yes,
yes.
exactly.
Because I'm sure you received numerous, like, duplicative ones that
Yes,
were asking the same thing.
you know, what we tried to do, we got about 30 email comments that we've gone through, and so that's the piece of it, yes.
Okay, thank you. So this will be publicly available, just for everyone to be aware. Okay. Okay, so Planning Commission members, so we have this memorandum with the amendments. Again, this is summarizing all of the things that we discussed at our last meeting, all of the things that Adam had just reviewed. I will ask if there's any particular comment or question that we want to review on these, or if we're in agreement. And again, we've already discussed these in detail at the last month's meeting.
Yeah, I don't have any additional questions or comments at this juncture.
My comments are all addressed, no further.
Anyone on this side?
No new comments, mine were picked up too.
Okay.
No, mine are there.
Okay, perfect. So what we're looking at then is these amendments. These are all things that we have commented and recommended in the past. Those have been incorporated then into this amendment. So it sounds like from our review of this, that we're all in agreement then that this captures all of the recommended changes that we've suggested over the past 2 months. So at this point, since it's up to the solicitor to determine the actual structure of how this gets incorporated into the draft, do we have any further comment, question, feedback from the Planning Commission? Otherwise, we can move to public comments. Okay, great. So we'll go ahead and move to public comment. Adam, is there anything else?
No, thank you very
Okay.
much.
Great. So for public comment, we have a lot of folks in the room. We want to make sure that we get to everybody's comments. If you were here last month, we had tried to divvy it up between process and substantive comments. For tonight, we're just going to do whatever public comment you have. You'll get one public comment, and we are going to limit it to 3 minutes, again, just to make sure that we get through everyone's public comment. So I'm going to go sequentially by row. I'm going to start in the back corner over here. If you would like to make a comment, please raise your hand and then come up to the podium. State your name and your address if you would like, or at least say if you're a resident or non-resident, and we will start the timer for your public comment. So back corner over here, if you'd like to come up, please raise your hand. Okay, seeing no hands, the next row up. All right, no hands, next row up over here. Sorry. As long as we can see, yeah. Oh, okay. What, okay. We'll get, we can share. Oop. This one is shared.
Good evening. My name is Dory Dowdy. I'm a Haverford Township resident in the Merwoods Park section. I'm here to raise concerns about the accuracy and version control of the zoning map that serves as the foundation for the proposed reorganization of the zoning ordinance. I've prepared 3 exhibits. Exhibit A identifies 2 areas on the Haverford Township zoning map marked last amended May 2021 rather, and created on July 2024. So it was amended, but then a map wasn't created until like 3 years later, where commercial labels appear directly on parcels shown in residential colors that contain actual homes. So I don't know how I'm going to, I should have brought a laser pointer, which I have back there, but I can. Right. The area down, this area is my first example. And it's an area of Darby Road, Westchester Pike, Township Line Road, where a C1 label sits on residential colored parcels. And further up Darby Road, along near the middle school between Campbell and Marthart Roads, is where a C3 label, which stands for a commercial type of zoning, appears on a residential parcel that it's entirely in a red color, and red is for a commercial zone. Exhibit B, which I don't have up there, but I do have here, and I'll have it with the maps. I went on to the Delaware County Public Property Records for these same locations. So B1 relates to A1, and then B2 relates to the A2 properties. So the A1, so A1 is that Darby Road, Westchester Pike, and Township Line. And then I went to the Delaware County public property records and went in to find out, I blacked out the person's name, but it does say it's a taxable residential residence, and then for the B2 one, for the 1910 Darby Road parcel number, it does indicate that that's a taxable residential, and again, that was colored in red on that map. So those are the two exhibits, and I have these, I'll be keeping them with the maps. So Exhibit C shows a PDF metadata screen capture of the Haverford Township zoning map, which indicates the file was, so I already mentioned to you, it was amended in May 2021. The map was actually created in July of 2024, but then inside this metadata, which is how you find out who has modified it as they have. It was created on October 2nd, 2024, and modified on January 20th, 2025, after the July 2024 date printed on the map. The reorganization has been presented as a non-substantive reorganization with no changes to the maps. However, these labeling errors and metadata issues have now been identified on the very map being used as a foundation for this process. The original July 2024 version of the map has not been located on E-Code 360, and the May 2021 amendment does not appear to be in the table of zoning map amendments, unless I haven't found it. Our questions are, were these residential zoned parcels officially changed to commercial zoned parcels in a subsequent version of this zoning map? And if so, when and where is this officially documented? Can I just do 2 more paragraphs, if that's okay?
If you have that in writing, or if you'd like to give that to us, we can read the rest of the comment.
Okay, well, then let's tear the sheet off and you can have it.
I'd be happy to read it for you. Yeah.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi.
Residents are entitled to
I'm sorry, if you could, your name, please?
I'm sorry. I'm not Dory. My name is Linda Mitchell. I live on White Marsh Road in Ardmore.
Thank you.
The balance is residents are entitled to transparency and an accurate, verifiable base map. The due diligence on this foundational document does not appear to have been completed. These are not minor issues. They are foundational errors in the map that underlies the entire reorganization. Therefore, I respectfully request that the Planning Commission not forward this draft to the Board of Commissioners until the original map is produced and made public. The identified errors are investigated and corrected, and the corrected map is clearly communicated to residents. Thank you. I have provided packets with the exhibits for your review. Is that it, Dory? That's it. Okay, thank you. Since I didn't use my 3 minutes, I thought I'd, if I may, is it okay if I make a comment?
You're still going.
Appreciate it. My comment is more personal, that I've had the opportunity to talk to approximately 200 to 250 residents. I've knocked on doors. I've gone to the Heritage Fair. I've spoke to many people. Every time I go to Crossborough Cuddies, I talk to people. And I will tell you that, in all honesty, as much as we like to use the word transparency, and I appreciate it, that is what the residents want. And I would say if I spoke to 250 people, and I am not exaggerating, it is simply 100% accurate where I'm saying maybe 225 people did not have any idea of anything that's going on. They didn't know about the comprehensive plan that was passed. They know nothing about what's going on now. And I only say this because that matters to us, right? It matters to everyone. I think if you're looking forward to planning something, you can't start with a failure. And it's starting with a failure if the majority of your residents, regardless of anything political, it's a community interest. I am telling you, no one knows about it. And we can push back and say, go on the website. But people don't know about it. They don't know about any of this. I can show you lists of houses that I've gone to. I've dedicated hours and hours of doing it. And I've gotten only thank you so much. Now, the latest frustration is the timing of this. The comprehensive plan, went through in December, if I'm correct, and this is the summer now. And there is a feeling, and what's so disconcerting to me is that people aren't trusting. they look like, they think that you are like, of course we don't know about this. Now, I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm telling you and communicating to you. And if you think, if you don't want it to appear to, if you want to be transparent and you're not purposely not being transparent, perception is important. I am telling you, the perception is that this is being, the timeliness of this is suspect and that your residents don't know about it. And I think you should care about that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, thank you. We were over here. So anybody in the next row that Dory was in, who would like to make a comment? Yes, sir. Thank you.
My name is Mario Gambescia, and I'm a resident of Haverford Township. And the topic I'm going to discuss has been addressed by the consultant. They were comments that I made to info@haverfordtownship.com. And I was glad to see it. I didn't see anything response immediate, but I did see a response here. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to read, and get my thoughts on the records regarding this, because decisions were already set as to my comments. So the definition of proposed revision for family is one or more persons occupying a single dwelling unit and living and cooking as a single housekeeping unit. A family includes any number of individuals related by blood, marriage, adoption, or other legal relationship, but no more than 3 unrelated persons. This limit does not apply to foster children under the care of the household. A family may include no more than 1 domestic employee, boarder, roomer, or lodger. That's the proposed definition. This new definition has 3 language changes. One is, and other legal relationships. Second is, the limit doesn't include foster children. And the third is the addition of domestic employee. I'm going to address other legal relationships first. The traditional family unit remains central to Haverford Township identity, a fact reflected in the number of churches and places of worship that you see throughout our neighborhoods. You can't go 4 blocks without passing a church or another form of worship. However, the existing definition of 2 or more persons related to blood, marriage, or adoption occupying a dwelling unit, living together, and maintaining a common household is unnecessarily narrow. I'll agree to that, And the modern viewpoint has shifted towards a broader, more functionally oriented definition of family. That's a given. As such, I would agree that the ordinance should reflect that shift. Okay, so I'm not here to argue that it can't shift. It does need to shift. That being said, any updating requires care. How are you going to update that? The stock definition drawn out of a consultant's experience in other municipalities and in other states doesn't work all the time. And to me, it doesn't work for Haverford Township. Domestic relationship recognized as legally binding in other states and municipalities may not carry the same legal status in Haverford Township, Delaware County, or the state of Pennsylvania. The phrase "and other legal relationships" standing alone is too vague and invites both overly broad and or narrow interpretations. I think Haverford Township would be better served with the following language. Family means 1 or more persons occupying a dwelling unit as a single nonprofit housekeeping unit, including persons related by blood, marriage, adoption, foster care placement, legal guardianship, kinship guardianship, permanent legal guardianship, or other duly authorized custodial or caretaking relationship established by court order or operation of law, but no more than 3 unrelated persons. The limit does not apply to foster children under the care of households, so foster children are still there. And a family may include no more than 1 domestic employee, boarder, roomer, or lodger.
Excuse me, sir,
This
sorry.
approach covers
I
full spectrum.
apologize, but your 3 minutes have expired.
Pardon me?
Your 3 minutes have expired.
It has?
Yes.
All right. I didn't hear the bell.
I just hit it as it was going off. I'll let it go off. If
Oh, I'm sorry,
No, it's a good audio.
I just make one other comment. Regarding foster children and the definition of foster care home, I made a comment to that which was addressed. In no way did I insinuate that a foster care home would be limited to certain particular uses. It could be permitted in every residential district that we have. You know, my point was that we needed to have a definition for what is a foster care home. We do it for a student home, we do it for assisted living home.
Thank you.
For child care, we should be doing a definition for foster care home as it relates to Delaware County and the state of Pennsylvania.
Thank you,
They have
sir.
specific regulations regarding that.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time, and seriously consider my comments.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, because it's a good visual. Okay. Next in the row, anybody else in that row? In the row next, anybody else on this side of the room? Yes.
Albert Marciano, I'm a resident of Haverford Town. First, I want to thank Adam and the board for the hard work in creating this document. It's huge, and we all know, and we've seen, it's a difficult task to do, and there have been some mistakes. And I worry about the mistakes that are in there. And what I would ask we put in there as an amendment or a proposal is that we have some sort of way of addressing, at some point we're going to wind up in zoning, and someone's going to look and say, here's a new document, it allows X, here's the old document, it does not. And it is a substantial change. What do we do? What wins at that point? And it may have been something that we wanted to occur, or it may have been something that was overlooked by accident. So I would ask we come up with some method of saying to zoning, hey, if you find this, if you have this, here's some relief. This is what we can address. I'm not going to go into details on how, leave it up to you guys, but I think we need to have some sort of way of saying that was a mistake. We did not mean that to occur. And how do we fix it without having a resident put into a situation that at one point something wasn't allowed and now it is, or vice versa. They were allowed to have it and now they can't. What do we do? The other comment I would make, Adam said before that we have to address all types of legal businesses in our zoning in Haverford. And I did a quick check on that, and it's iffy, I'll say it that way. We can have regional areas. In other words, I guess some of what we do with our sewage system, we have a commission with multiple municipalities involved to solve our issues there. Supposedly, from what I saw, you can do that with zoning also. So Broomall, Havertown, Lower Merion could get together and say, hey, we're going to put this type of business in this section in Broomall, the industrial park, and not have it in Havertown. From my understanding, that is allowed. I don't know the details. You have to have the agreement between all the parties involved as far as Havertown, Broomall, and everyone else. But we do not necessarily have to address every single legal business in Haverford Township, as far as I understand, from what I've seen. And I mean, have there been any discussions? I don't know if you guys would know whether it's down the road, like, have we addressed that at all? Have we looked at it and said, yes, we know that, we're in talks with other municipalities, or is that not even on the board now? Thank you.
Thank you. And just really briefly, I'm not aware that there's been any discussion about regionalizing the planning, like doing a regional planning commission. I'm not aware that there's any plans to do a regional planning commission to do shared use, land uses like that. They do exist in Montgomery County and Western Montgomery County, but do we have any in Delaware County? No. Thank you. Okay, last call for anybody on this side of the room. Okay, seeing none, we'll again start at the back and, yes, sir.
I'm going to finish what Mario had to say, if that's okay.
Oh, okay, sure, you'll have 3 minutes.
I won't take the 3 minutes. Stephen Gambesh, I'm Mario's brother, so I figured I'd help him out. So he made the point about definition of family. So his last paragraph says, I'm not one to ignore the elephant in the room. I'm concerned that this vague, open-ended definition is an attempt to define relationship agreements drawn up to cover certain property ownership rights, financial rights and responsibilities, and certain other legal protections into the definition of family. Transactional agreements of these types do not make a family. He's going to give 2 examples. One is domestic partnership agreements and cohabitation agreements. While these types of agreements may be legally binding under the proper conditions in Haverford Township, they do not create a recognized legal status in Haverford Township, Delaware County, or Pennsylvania. So that's it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, last call for this side of the room. And seeing none, again, we'll move over here. So we'll start in the back row and we'll work our way forward. So anybody in the back row? Yes, sir.
Yeah, hi, my name is John Druin. I'm a resident of the 8th Ward in Havertown. First wanted to thank everybody for the extensive work you've done. I kind of appreciate having gone through the zoning documents in the past and looking at the new versions. There's just been a really major initiative that's taken a lot of time, a lot of effort, but it is overdue because there's a lot of things that residents of the township would like to see in these zoning ordinances, and I think it's kind of important to really have something that's updated, which it hasn't been updated in 50 or 70 years, and using different things that I've seen. But you know, I'm somebody who's lived in the township for almost 30 years, and I've been active in community volunteerism for the last 20 years, really getting involved with organization, participating in volunteer events as a volunteer, and as somebody who really pays attention to the community and community initiatives, I pay attention to what's going on in communications coming out of the township. So I follow them on Facebook and Instagram. I get emails from Commissioner Trombetta and Commissioner Hart and from the township itself. Watch the YouTube videos of meetings. I attend the special meetings that have been held, especially around the comprehensive plan and the rezoning. Visit the websites, look through a lot of the documents, very well put together. Agree that there could be things that, you know, are in there. It's a huge initiative, and maybe there are things that are being overlooked, but I think, you know, the way you find that out is to further the discussion, kick the tires a little bit, and as you're thinking about zoning changes, you may recognize things that, you know, perhaps had a broader impact than would be expected. But we do have another opportunity to revisit that, because this ordinance, if it goes to the commissioners and gets adopted by the commissioners on the first phase, will come back in the second phase, and there will be another opportunity to address any oversights at that point. And then, you know, in terms of all the communications I've seen through all the various communication channels I follow, there's been a tremendous effort by the township. I know a lot of the people in the township. They're very sincere. They're trying to get the information out. The problem hasn't really been so much with the delivery. It's on the receiving end. There's, you know, this community is a lot more engaged than most, but still, there's, you know, only about 50% of the people vote in municipal elections, and far fewer than that will kind of pay attention to what goes on at the municipality in between elections. So it's not surprising that people don't know about this. There has been a huge communication effort. Probably one thing that could be done differently is perhaps put a press release out as we enter phase 2 of this, really explaining everything, send it to the News of Delaware County, the Patch. So, you know, perhaps more people will start picking it up through news outlets than communications channels. Let's face it, not everybody's going to follow the township on Facebook. And I think through that, you know, also over the last 20 years, seen a lot of initiatives where there have been efforts to really get public engagement. And they, you know, I think looking back at Haverford Reserve, for example, initially that was a project that was kind of backroom deals were being made. That was exposed, it became a very public process. A lot of people asked for things like walking trails, recreation fields, dog park, rec center, an appropriate balance between housing and green space. And we got it all because of this public dialogue. So this public process shouldn't be something we should be afraid of. Brookline Park as well. That's sort of something that, again, unfortunately, we couldn't preserve the old schoolhouse there, but there was a public engagement process that went on that now a lot of public comment and public ideas have gone into that, and we're getting a very nice park that's being developed.
Sorry, I'm sorry. Your time has expired, but I do appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Okay, but last thing is just like, I think this should move forward so that we can get that public dialogue about how we want this township to evolve. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. All right. So. All right. We're working at. Okay. We had two people both taking time but not taking time, but we're good. Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. Next over here in that back row. Next row up. Yes, ma'am. We got our timer set. Timer's on. It's on loud this time.
It is on loud.
Okay.
Hi, Mac Wagner, Rosewood Lane in Ward 6. My concern is about non-conforming properties. I've heard a lot about this, and so I don't really understand. But I'm under the belief that a great number of properties, maybe as many as 30 to 40% in Haverford Township, are non-conforming. I have one. When I bought my house, I was not informed that I had a non-conforming garage, but I do. My garage is built on the property line, no setback. So if a tree fell on my garage and then it needed to be rebuilt, what would that entail? Would I be able to rebuild the garage as it currently is, or would I have to follow the new zoning criteria?
We're not the zoning officers to make that determination. Do you want to weigh in?
I can. So I do work for a zoning, not this zoning. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I don't pause the time. I do work for a zoning board, not this zoning board, but I work for a zoning board. It's my understanding and my experience with zoning boards, when you purchase a property, when you have a previous nonconformity, typically zoning boards do not hold that against you because that is not something that you were necessarily had knowledge of prior to that. I know I advise my board when there's a previous nonconformity, I make it known that this was something that you had, was not something you created. It was not something that you did not create that condition specifically. So for that reason, most of the time, that is taken into consideration by the zoning board.
Okay, so all of the things that are non-conforming will still be non-conforming, and voila, fine.
Yeah, yes, anything that's legally non-conforming, pre-existing non-conforming is allowed to continue so long as that use continues. If you discontinue that use, then you would have to bring the property into compliance with zoning.
Okay, so as long as the use stays the same, every property that has non-conforming issues will still be allowed to have those, even though we're doing this whole new rewrite for zoning.
The rewrite is not changing how non-conforming properties are treated. So this zoning rewrite is just a reorganization as a structural thing. It's not changing any of the policies surrounding how non-conforming properties are treated.
Okay, so if the tree limb fell on my front porch and my setback is not conforming, I could rebuild my front porch, even though my setback is non-conforming.
So we're not the correct body to give that determination for you. I would defer to the township zoning officer to make that determination. We don't get involved in levels like that, and I don't want to give you any advice as to your property since we are not the zoning officer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, yes, sir.
Hi, my name's Mike Lee. I'm a township resident. You know, I guess I had a question about the AICP Code of Ethics. I went through it. I was very impressed with all the provisions in there about protecting the most vulnerable people in the neighborhood and making sure everybody had a voice, even the people who can't read 250 pages between two documents. And what we've been talking about a lot, and we had 4 stages before, and what we've been talking a lot about is residents being given alternative methods that we just don't understand these documents enough to comment on them. I'm not a land use attorney. I'm not a urban planner. To me, we're missing out on the voices of so many people. And my question is, what's your role in making sure that their voices are heard? Because to me, this whole process has been nothing but we have a steering committee that's behind closed doors. We have 2 members on the planning commission who are steering committee members. We were told we were going to have active participation, public participation in the beginning. After the last meeting, we changed it to this 2-phase process. We need to get the public participation. Because I look at this stuff and I say, wow, there's obvious mistakes in there. I mean, we saw it at 24 South Eagle Road. I just need help, and we've been begging for it for a while. And I'm hoping that you will do that as part of your review, as part of your ethical needs, ethics in your thing. Thank you so much.
Okay, anybody else in that row? Next row up? Yes, sir.
Hi, folks. Breck Taylor, Colfax Road. Just a comment/question. Fully understand this is not about specific future land use requests. I understand there are no changes in the current zoning map, although we have some questions about that map. Really appreciate all the considerable work and documentation. Nevertheless, unless I missed it, and it's always possible, I did not see maps showing where current zoning would specifically permit new land use categories. And you guys, Adam, you guys do ArcGIS, right? Adam, you guys do ArcGIS, right? Great, okay, so where are the maps showing, given current zoning for specific blocks, where somebody could apply for, these are some new land use categories, an adult motion picture theater? Where could that go, given the current map? Not, whether you guys approve it or not is a whole different thing. An adult cabaret, where could that go? That's another new use. An artisan manufacturing. Sounds to me like that could include a tannery. That'd be interesting. Civic use, which sounds like it could include, given the definition you all had, an ice facility. Data center, where could that go? A drive-in, where could that go? Industrial, how about that? Microbrewery, outdoor entertainment venues. I really think folks would really be able to better grasp what this means. I understand that you guys have to allow all possible future categories because you can't exclude categories, but I think public processing with a map showing, hey, here are each of these new land uses, given the current, Adam, given the current map of what uses are zoned what, where could those go? That'd be cool. Thank you guys so much.
Okay, thank you, sir. Next row down. Any comments? Anybody else on this side of the room? Anybody else who's standing in the back? Anybody else at all in the room? Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much for everyone's public comment. Seeing no additional public comment, we will close the comment right now. Just want to touch base a couple things that were raised relating to the concerns with the zoning map. I'm going to refer that to the township to take a look if that's just an error in the GIS mapping. That's not something that we would control, and we are not making any amendments to the map as part of this proposal. So if those are just errors in the township's GIS, I will refer that to them to investigate those concerns that were brought up. There was a question of if there's a mistake in zoning, how can it be addressed? There is an outlet process for that. That's through the zoning hearing board. So if there's something that somebody wants to do and it's not permitted, or they have a discrepancy of some kind, right now it goes through the zoning hearing board. So there is the out for that. And then we are working on, the next phase of this project. We'll also be looking at the different zoning districts. So that kind of ties into the last gentleman in terms of where these new uses are going to be permitted. We haven't actually permitted them in any districts yet. We're just introducing them as definitions, but they're not actually incorporated they're not designated within a district as of this time. So right now they don't exist within a district yet. That is going to be figured out in the next phase of our zoning amendments. We talked about, we do not have a regional planning commission. We appreciate the discussion about family. As was stated earlier, we did review this with our solicitor, so that has been vetted through our solicitor's office. The question about non-conforming properties, I would again refer you to Jamie to help provide a little bit more information if you have specific questions about your property and non-conforming uses and reconstruction of things. And then finally, just to kind of hit on the concern that folks are not aware of these changes. We recognize that it's a really difficult thing to have people pay attention and understand and aware of what's going on in local government. It's not always the most interesting thing to people, and this is a big, complicated thing. I do also want to reiterate that we are residents, we are volunteers, we are members of the community, we are advisory to the commissioners, so we serve because we care about what goes on. We do not dictate, control, organize, send out, mail out, or in any way control any of the communications. So your feedback is very well received. We advocate for strong communication. Ultimately, that does come through the township, and I know the township has been making really concerted efforts to try to get this out as much as possible. It's not going to reach everybody, unfortunately, and so they do try to do everything that they can. So I do appreciate, and it's always helpful to hear from everybody where we are, seeing some shortfalls, and that helps to kind of improve then how we proceed with it for the next round. So I appreciate everybody coming out, the fact that you're here, the fact that you stuck through a land development review first. Some of you have been here for all three of these meetings. So I just want to express my gratitude to everybody for coming out, for caring enough about it to show up, to make comments, or just to listen, to talk to your neighbors about what's been going on. Word of mouth is honestly sometimes the best way that we can communicate. So I do want to encourage everybody to let the folks in your network know that there's going to be more conversations. As Jamie explained earlier, this is going to have to go back to the county for review. So we have another period of review and public comment while that's in review before it goes to the commissioners. So again, we're advisory only, so our recommendation is not the last stop of this train. There'll be continued opportunities to review the draft. We're going to have the revised materials available tomorrow, Monday at least, soon.
We'll get them up on the website. It is likely going to be Monday when we'll actually have them up on the website.
Okay, because it sounds like we probably got some more comments. So they're going to gather all the comments, and all of this material will be available on the website very soon. So again, thank you very much all for coming out. At this time, there being no further public comment, I would ask if there is then a recommendation on the table that the Planning Commission would like to make regarding the proposed zoning reorganization.
What were the two ways again? There were two ways to recommend this?
So the solicitor will make that decision, but that will either be that the amendments that we've discussed at our last meeting and tonight will either exist as a standalone document that's addended, is that a word? As an addendum to the existing draft, or these amendments will be incorporated within the actual text of the draft. So the draft will be amended to include these, or the draft will stay as it is and have this as a supplemental document.
And functionally, they would work.
Functionally will be the same.
Yes.
So we're recommending for one of those or for either of those options?
No, we're not recommending the options. The option is going to be determined by the solicitor, but we're saying proceed with the amendments either in total or if there's only certain amendments, but we discussed that we were all in agreement with these amendments because it's what we had discussed previously. So my understanding is that we're all in agreement that these are the amendments, so the recommendation would be inclusive of the draft as presented with these amendments that we've discussed. Does that make sense?
And the updated numbering and lettering.
Yes.
Adam recommended.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that would be, if somebody would like to make that motion, we can then consider that.
I move to recommend approval of the zoning ordinance reorganization and the subsequent amendments as listed in the document in front of us, and give the leeway to renumber as deemed necessary by the solicitor.
Okay, thank you. So we have Kim who made the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, Steve seconds. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, 6-0, motion passes. Thank you again, everybody, for coming out for that. We do have one more item of business. No, I apologize. We do not have another order of business. Is there any public comment related to any other topic area? Seeing none, may I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
All right, Steve motions.
I'll second.
Oh, I heard two. Well, Jen seconds. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we're adjourned. The time is 9:41 p.m. I hope everyone has a great rest of your evening. Get home safe.